Al Capone, the notorious gangster who ruled Chicago with an iron fist, was a figure both feared and revered. His name became synonymous with the dark underbelly of the city, a symbol of power and ruthlessness. He was a man who instilled fear in the hearts of many, his mere presence enough to send shivers down the spines of those who crossed his path. Yet there was one name that sent shivers down even Capone's spine: Hymie Weiss. Weiss was not just another gangster vying for control, he was a formidable force, a man whose reputation for brutality and cunning was well earned. Weiss wasn't just another gangster, he was a force of nature, a relentless and strategic criminal who became Capone's most formidable adversary. His tactics were as ruthless as they were effective, making him a figure of dread in the criminal underworld. A ruthless and cunning criminal who became Capone's most formidable adversary, Weiss was known for his strategic mind and his ability to outmaneuver his enemies. His presence in the underworld was a game changer, altering the dynamics of power in Chicago. He was the Boogeyman of Cicero, a name whispered in fear and respect. His influence extended far beyond his immediate circle, affecting the lives of countless individuals in the city. The man who turned Chicago's underworld on its head. Their rivalry was legendary, a clash of titans that left a lasting mark on the city's history. The streets of Chicago became a battleground, with each side vying for dominance. A bloody struggle for control of the city's lucrative bootlegging operations, gambling dens and vice rackets. The stakes were high and the cost of failure was often death. This was a time when power was measured in blood and loyalty was a rare commodity. This essay delves into the life and times of Hymie Weiss, a man whose name became synonymous with fear and respect in equal measure, exploring his rise to power from his early days as a small-time hoodlum to his ascension as one of the most feared gangsters in Chicago. His bitter rivalry with Al Capone, a conflict that shaped the criminal landscape of the city and left an indelible mark on its history. And his lasting impact on Chicago's underworld, a legacy of violence, power, and the relentless pursuit of control. This is the story of Hymie Weiss, the Boogeyman of Cicero. Chicago in the 1920s was a city on the edge. The noble experiment of Prohibition had backfired spectacularly, turning ordinary citizens into lawbreakers and criminals into kings. With the flow of liquor outlawed, a vast black market emerged, controlled by ruthless gangs vying for control. Born Earl Wachachowski in 1898, Weiss grew up in the tough streets of Chicago's North Side. Under O'Banion's tutelage, Weiss learned the ropes of the bootlegging trade, quickly rising through the ranks. The rivalry between the North Side gang and the Chicago outfit was more than just a business dispute. It was a battle for the soul of the city. Hymie Weiss wasn't a man to be trifled with. He possessed a sharp mind for strategy and a chilling disregard for human life, earning him a fearsome reputation within the North Side gang. His ruthlessness made him Dean O'Banion's most trusted enforcer, a man who could get things done no matter the cost. Weiss was instrumental in expanding the North Side gang's operations. He orchestrated hijackings, intimidated rivals, and organized the distribution of illicit liquor, solidifying his position as O'Banion's right-hand man. The fragile peace between the North Side gang and the Chicago outfit shattered in 1924 when O'Banion swindled Torrio and Capone out of a substantial sum in a brewery deal. The death of Dean O'Banion left a void in the North Side gang, a power vacuum that Hymie Weiss was more than willing to fill. Weiss, known for his fierce loyalty and strategic mind, saw this as his moment to rise. He saw an opportunity to avenge his fallen leader and solidify his own control over the gang. With meticulous planning and ruthless determination, Weiss began to orchestrate his moves. Weiss's reign was marked by a wave of violence that terrorized Chicago. The city, already gripped by Prohibition-era tensions, now faced an even more brutal gang war. He orchestrated a series of brazen attacks on Torrio and Capone's operations, each strike more daring than the last, hitting their speakeasies, breweries, and gambling dens determined to cripple their empire piece by piece. Weiss's tactics were not just about brute force. They were calculated moves designed to destabilize his enemies. Weiss's strategic mind allowed him to anticipate Capone's moves, often staying one step ahead in this deadly game of chess. Turning the tables on the Chicago outfit time and again, he managed to keep his adversaries on their toes, never allowing them a moment of respite. The streets of Chicago became a battleground, a chaotic theater of war where no one was safe. Stained with the blood of gangsters caught in the crossfire, the city bore witness to the relentless and ruthless climb of Hymie Weiss to the top of the criminal underworld. Section 5. Blood on the Streets, the Weiss-Capone War Erupts. The rivalry between Hymie Weiss and Al Capone was more than just a turf war. It was a clash of personalities, a battle between two men who refused to yield. Weiss, the cunning strategist, always a step ahead against Capone, the flamboyant and ruthless operator, used to getting his way. Their conflict turned Chicago into a war zone. Bombings, shootings, and disappearances became commonplace as the body count mounted on both sides. The streets of Chicago were painted red with the blood of gangsters and innocents alike. Weiss, known for his sharp mind and strategic brilliance, orchestrated attacks that left Capone reeling. He was always calculating, always planning his next move, never letting his guard down. Capone, on the other hand, was a man of action. His response to Weiss's tactics was swift and brutal. He believed in overwhelming force and intimidation, making sure everyone knew who ruled the streets. The city was gripped by fear as these two titans clashed. Businesses were extorted, and anyone who got in their way was swiftly dealt with. The police were often powerless, either outgunned or on the payroll of one of the factions. One particularly audacious attack saw Weiss's men riddling Capone's car with bullets as he dined at a Cicero restaurant. The attempt on Capone's life only served to further enrage the already volatile gangster, pushing the conflict to a fever pitch. The violence escalated to unprecedented levels. Bombings became a daily occurrence, and the sound of gunfire was a constant backdrop to life in Chicago. The citizens lived in a state of perpetual fear, never knowing when the next attack would come. The war between Weiss and Capone was not just about control of the city's lucrative bootlegging operations. It was a personal vendetta that consumed both men. Each attack was met with a more brutal retaliation, and the cycle of violence seemed never-ending. The attempt on Capone's life only served to further enrage the already volatile gangster, pushing the conflict to a fever pitch. The city braced itself for the next wave of violence, knowing that neither man would back down until one of them was dead. The Weiss-Capone War was a dark chapter in Chicago's history, a time when the streets ran red with blood and the rule of law was overshadowed by the rule of the gun. It was a war that would leave a lasting scar on the city and its people. Section 6. A near miss, the attempt on Capone's life. The intensity of the Weiss-Capone War reached its peak in 1926 with a brazen attempt on Capone's life. Weiss, always the strategist, planned a daring assault on Capone's headquarters, the Hawthorne Inn, a fortified fortress in the Chicago suburb of Cicero. On the morning of September 20th, 1926, a caravan of 10 cars carrying Weiss's gunmen descended upon the Hawthorne Inn. Armed with machine guns and shotguns, they unleashed a torrent of bullets into the building, riddling it with hundreds of rounds. Capone, caught off guard, narrowly escaped death. Section 7. Retaliation and Terror. Capone strikes back. The Hawthorne Inn attack was a turning point in the Weiss-Capone War. Determined to crush Weiss and regain control, Capone unleashed a wave of terror on the North Side gang. Capone's retaliation was swift and brutal. He ordered his men to strike back with unrelenting force, targeting anyone associated with Weiss. Speakeasies were bombed, gang members were gunned down in the streets, and a climate of fear gripped the city. Section 8. The Shadow of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Although Hymie Weiss wasn't directly involved in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the event was a direct consequence of the bloody gang war he waged against Al Capone. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which occurred on February 14, 1929, was a meticulously planned execution of 7 members of the North Side gang. The massacre was orchestrated by Capone, who sought to eliminate his rivals and consolidate his control over Chicago's underworld. Section 9. The Fall of a Kingpin. Weiss Meets His End. The relentless pressure of the gang war took a toll on Hymie Weiss. On October 11, 1926, Weiss met his end in a hail of gunfire outside Chicago's Holy Name Cathedral. Capone's men, who had been staking out Weiss's headquarters across the street, had finally caught up with their elusive target. The gunmen unleashed a torrent of lead, killing Weiss instantly. His death sent shockwaves through Chicago's underworld, marking the end of an era. Section 10. The Legacy of a Ruthless Era. Hymie Weiss's reign at the top of Chicago's underworld was short-lived, but his impact was undeniable. He became a legend in his own time, a symbol of the ruthless ambition and violence that characterized the Prohibition era. Weiss's bloody feud with Al Capone left an indelible mark on Chicago's history. Despite his criminal activities, Weiss remains a complex and intriguing figure. He remains a compelling figure in the annals of American organized crime, a reminder of a time when gangsters ruled the streets. Section 11. Uncovering the history of the underworld. The story of Hymie Weiss is just one chapter in the larger narrative of organized crime in America. It's a story that continues to captivate and horrify, offering a glimpse into a world where power, greed, and violence reign supreme. Exploring the lives of gangsters like Hymie Weiss allows us to delve into this fascinating and often disturbing aspect of American history. It enables us to understand the factors that gave rise to organized crime, the impact it had on society, and the ongoing efforts to combat it. By understanding the past, we can better navigate the present and future.